Welcome to GamesAct. Today I figured I'd take a look at the Bonk series. Now in the beginning, Bonk was basically a mascot for the TurboGrafx 16 console. Back then everything needed a mascot. Whatever happened to mascots anyway? Still, it didn't take long for Bonk to find his way onto other platforms, and I'll be covering these games in the order in which they were released, or at least as far as I can discern. So let's begin. In late 1989, Hudson Soft teamed up with Atlas and developer Red to bring the world the very first PC Genjin game. Basically, the name means primitive man, and it was also a play on the PC Engine, which is the console for which the game you see before you was released. You play as a caveman bonking things on your way to save your girlfriend, who is a seal for some reason. Hey, I'm not judging. Along the way, there are living plants which you can jump on. These can reveal some fruit which will help restore your life, or a heart which can restore even more of it. The pink plants that don't animate are dangerous. If you bounce on one, a weird demon thing will pop out and try to get you, and it hurts if he touches you. So be sure to avoid the non-animated pink plants. The yellow plants act as springs. You can also climb up the walls with your teeth, and I recommend engaging the turbo function for this. You'll also come across meat, which increases your caveman powers. Bonk gets super pissed off when he eats meat. Maybe he's a vegetarian and he doesn't like that you're literally forcing him to eat giant slabs of meat. I don't know. One piece of meat will enable you to freeze enemies when you smash the ground with your head. You can walk right through them when they're frozen. A second piece of meat or a large meat will make you invincible and change the music. Once the music ends, you're no longer invincible, but you still have the power of a single piece of meat for a while. Each stage has multiple areas to go through. After that is a boss fight. These are really fun. You also collect little smiley faces along the way. After you defeat a boss, they tally up and restore some of your life. The game is really enjoyable, though some of the stages can get slightly boring. You can often bypass large areas by enabling the turbo feature on your controller and just spinning over the danger below. The graphics are minimal, yet very pleasant with some nice colors. Both you and the enemies are all well drawn and quite distinctive. The sound and music are both great, with some really catchy and memorable tunes. This game was brought to North America on the TurboGrafx 16 in 1990 as Bonk's Adventure. The game is largely the same here, aside from the name change and some English translations here and there. Bonk is a really fun game, and it appealed to the audience who were looking to buy a newfangled 16-bit era machine. As such, it was a huge hit for NEC and helped give the TurboGrafx 16 some recognition, though it certainly didn't propel them to the heights of Sega or Nintendo. The game would eventually be packed in with the TurboGrafx 16 alongside Keith Courage and Alpha Zones, and was also included with the Turbo Duo on the Gate of Thunder 3-in-1 CD. This was a great start for the series. Hudson Soft didn't waste any time and released Bonk's Revenge in 1991 on the PC Engine and TurboGrafx 16. This one added some memory, and it shows. Everything has been upgraded and the game as a whole feels much more lively. The play mechanics are the same, but now you can bonk on certain plants to change their color and get a power-up or an extra life, you never know. Most of the stages here have been designed so you can't bypass large areas by spinning over them like you could in the first game. I love the opening stage. It presents absolutely no threat to you until the very top. You work your way up and up, murdering creatures who didn't do anything bad to anybody, they're just sleeping. That's okay, you kill them anyway because they're the same type of creature who tries to hurt you all throughout the series. I mean, anyone who looks like that must be evil. Always judge a book by its cover is a life lesson that you'll learn while playing Bonk's Revenge. There's lots more things to collect in this game as well, but food items like burgers, fries, and ice cream won't restore any of your life. Only certain types of fruit will do that. There aren't as many smiley faces to get this time out. Most of them are in the many bonus stages that you'll find in this game. The smiley faces are tallied up after a boss fight, and if you have enough, you go to a special stage where you can get life and extra dudes. Speaking of bosses, I've never figured out a good strategy for this one. I always lose a ton of lives on her. Anyone have any tips? There's less emphasis on the meat in this game, but when you max out, you become a literal butthead. You also breathe fire, which is pretty cool. The graphics are a big step up, and like I said, everything is much more lively. The only thing that I didn't care for is that Bonk's spinning animation has been slowed down and it looks kinda silly. The music has even been improved, and it's some great stuff. Overall, I've always felt that this might be the best Bonk game, but let's check out the rest. In 1992, Bonk received his first game on a different platform, where he was known as BC Kid on the Commodore Amiga. This is basically a straightforward port of the original Bonk's Adventure from the TurboGrafx. However, the game received a pretty big upgrade in color. Also, there's some pseudo-parallax scrolling in that the sky gradient will scroll separately from the main graphics, but only vertically. Control-wise, this game supports 2 buttons. You've got to understand that apparently this is asking quite a bit from the Amiga, as very few games ever used more than 1 button. I'm not sure why they rarely ever thought to use more than 1 button, but that's a discussion for another day. The game controls fine, but it does feel more floaty than the TurboGrafx 16 games. The large majority of the music has also been changed. The new stuff isn't quite as catchy as the original music, but it's not bad. I think it's trying to sound more like caveman music or something. I don't know why they bothered to recompose the game, but I'm not necessarily complaining about it. The game seems to run only at 50 Hz, which is the PAL refresh rate. I only got a black screen when I tried to run it at the inconceivably fast 60 Hz refresh rate. It also won't fill your screen for some reason, and I've zoomed in the gameplay for this segment. Normally, it'll look a bit more like this. Again, I'm not sure why, as I'm the furthest thing from an Amiga expert, but hey, people tell me it's the best. Still, I found this version very interesting, more so that it exists than anything else. It was nice seeing Bonk's world with updated colors and hearing the reimagined tunes. So far, Bonk has been seen on the TurboGrafx and the Amiga. However, his next stop would be on a portable system known by many as the Game Boy. Actually, known by everybody as the Game Boy. I don't know why I said known by many, let's just go. Bonk's Adventure showed up on the Game Boy around the same time as the Amiga game in late 1992. While this shares the same name as the first game, it's not a direct port. Some of the stages are similar to the TurboGrafx 16 original, while others are closer to Bonk's Revenge, and some are even original to this game. They added a world map to look at here and there, if that's something that gets you excited. As you can see, it's pretty watered down compared to what we've seen so far, but it still plays decently. And this game seems a lot tougher, mainly because I feel like I have a bit less control over Bonk. I'd say the graphics are average for the Game Boy. Bonk no longer spins, but instead rotates while he's standing up in the air. Look at that, it's so weird. The music is mostly all from Bonk's Revenge, and it's great stuff, but of course the Game Boy can't sound as good as the TurboGrafx. I remember being kind of sad seeing Bonk show up on a different platform when this came out. If he's on the Game Boy, then he's no longer a TurboGrafx 16 mascot. After all these years though, it's an interesting game to finally play. Meanwhile, also in late 1992, Air Zonk was unleashed to the world on the TurboGrafx 16. This isn't technically a Bonk game, but it does deserve at least a passing mention. This is a shooter starring Zonk, which is sort of a future Bonk. He wears sunglasses because he is cool. This is a shooter with lots of fantastic parallax scrolling and some amazing music. It also has an impressive number of power-ups that you can get. This one is extremely enjoyable, and I recommend it for anyone who enjoys good games. 1993 brought us Bonk 3, Bonk's Big Adventure on the TurboGrafx 16 and also the TurboGrafx Super CD, also known as the Turbo Duo. The hue card is 8 megabits, which is almost inconceivably huge for the PC Engine / TurboGrafx 16. This game introduces red and blue candies for you to consume. Eating a red one will turn you into a small bonk, which will allow you to get into small areas. Eating a blue one turns you into giant bonk, where you can, be giant, I guess. Looks pretty impressive though. He is fairly tough to control due to his size, however. Take any damage in either mode and you return to normal-sized bonk. This installment has a good variety of stages. A lot of it feels like it's reused from past games, especially early on, but there is still a ton of new stuff here. Like this stage where the sun keeps rising and setting, making the screen darker and brighter. The gameplay is good, except the shrinking and growing honestly doesn't add a whole lot to the experience for me. I can't say that it detracts from it either, and I can certainly understand why they wanted to try a new play mechanic. The boss fights in this one are really fun and some of them are pretty big. The game even offers 2-player simultaneous gameplay, though you both share the same life bar, which is strange. The stage design can be kind of weird at times, like when you're maneuvering around these giant books. So I'm assuming Bonk is a normal-sized caveman, more or less. Books, teacups, and whatnot shouldn't be this huge compared to him. Does this game think it's Castle of Illusion or something? Oh, and let's not ignore the fact that books didn't exist in caveman days. You know, I'm starting to think that the Bonk games are a work of fiction and not based on a true story. Visually, I don't think it looks quite as good as Bonk's Revenge, though as I mentioned, the giant Bonk is pretty impressive. Also, there's lots of variety and enemies, which is nice, so I don't really knock any points off for this. Unfortunately, the CD version of this game has less animation than the hue card version, if you can believe that. This mainly affects Giant Bonk as there just wasn't enough RAM to fit all of his frames in on the CD version. Honestly, it's quite disappointing. As far as the music goes, it sounds good on the hue card, but not quite as nice as Bonk's Revenge. The CD version, of course, has CD quality Redbook audio, which normally sounds awesome, if perhaps a bit too bright in the EQ department. The CD was only released in North America. Either version of the game is lots of fun, and both are stupid expensive. So if you've gotta have a physical copy, just get whichever is cheapest. Super Air Zonk came to the TurboGrafx Super CD in 1993. Unfortunately, there's not much that's very super about this one. The game now works a bit differently from the original Air Zonk in that you need to rescue the character you eventually join with. The action is much slower, and all in all the game feels more boring as a result. Even the parallax scrolling that made the first game so great is nowhere to be seen here. The good news is that the music is usually awesome, and you can even pick the order you want to play the first 4 levels. Otherwise, I get the feeling like they felt they were obligated to make the game, but they didn't really want to. It's a good game, but it could have been a lot better. Bonk's Adventure made its way to the NES in time for Christmas in 1993. This one is mostly a straight-up demake of the original TurboGrafx 16 game. It's also one of the really rare and expensive games on the platform, coming out at the end of the system's life. As you can see, it looks like a watered-down port, but at least the controls don't feel floaty like the Amiga version does. They did change some of the stages around a bit, so it's not a direct copy. Of course, due to the reduced colors, you can't tell which is a fruit plant and which is a meat plant. This certainly can't look as good as the original, but honestly, I think they could have done a bit better with the hardware. At least the bosses are all still pretty big. The sound is similar to the TurboGrafx, but of course it's in mono and it doesn't sound as nice. The area clear theme from Bonk 3 plays when you clear an area, which I thought was interesting. I tend to think that uninteresting things are interesting, so don't mind me. This is a decent hand-me-down game for the system, but nowhere near worth the asking price these days. In early 1994, GB Genjin Land Viva Chikun Kingdom came to the Game Boy only in Japan. This game definitely isn't worth your time unless you can read Japanese, because there is a lot of it. Basically, it's supposed to be a bunch of mini-games with Bonk, but I found it to be a game more about talking. In fact, I was unable to escape from this room no matter how I answered his questions. If you can understand the language, I'd say give it a go and let me know if it's actually any good. But for right now, I can only let you know that it exists. In this stage in his life, Bonk is pretty popular. He's no Mario or Sonic, but he's far from unknown. Hell, he was popular enough to even make it into the arcades. Also in 1994, Bonk came to the arcades as Bonk's Adventure arcade version, courtesy of Kaneko. The problem with this is that Kaneko kind of sucked at making games that were enjoyable, and this one is no exception. Aeroblasters/Airbuster, though, is the exception. It's quite a bit different from your typical Bonk game. The stages are all extremely short, and your goal is basically to make it to the end. Along the way, you collect smiley faces that attach themselves to your head for some reason. This will make your attack a bit stronger and easier to hit enemies, but the smileys are very easy to lose. There are also various other power-ups and things to grab, like a sports ball. As long as you're holding a sports ball of some kind, you gain points. I have no idea why anyone thought Bonk needed to have a sports tie-in. 2 players can play, and player 2 is a girl Bonk. You can choose from any of the 21 levels in the game as you play. After you defeat 3 of them, you can choose which boss you want to fight. And these boss fights can be tedious, especially since you move so slowly. Gotta say though, the graphics are fantastic. Same goes for most of the music. But at the end of the day, Hudson Soft chose the wrong developer to make a Bonk arcade game. They should have chosen Sega. Anyway, check out my full review on this in our Left in the Arcade 4 episode. Super Bonk came to the Super Nintendo, and it was another 1994 game. This is a very clear and direct follow-up to Bonk 3. You still have the red and blue candies to make you bigger and smaller, though you don't get quite as big as you did on the mighty TurboGrafx 16. There's a new yellow candy to shrink back to normal size now. I'm surprised this wasn't in Bonk 3. Now when Bonk eats meat, he gets super crazy. And if you happen to be big, he turns into a weird chicken or praying mantis thing. I don't know what that's supposed to be, but it's weird and it kind of creeps me out. If you have more meat, then you become a weird lizard thing. You can also shout yourself some moving platforms if you need them. Yeah, seriously. What I think is really cool is that sometimes the enemies will eat the blue candies themselves and then they grow. That's a really good idea, actually. Now, only if they'd eat some meat and transform into crazy altered versions as well. The control feels pretty close to the TurboGrafx versions, and a lot of the enemies have made the trip over as well. And once again, Bonk being a caveman means absolutely nothing in this game, as he starts out in a sprawling modern city. Then he appears to go back in time to a more suitable stage where he needs to avoid giant dinosaurs that are trying to step on him. After that, he's on the moon, so go figure. But then again, he did go to the moon at the end of the first game. Oh, but wait, when he's in the Jurassic stage, he suddenly goes into a room where, once again, everything in it is giant. The stage design here is pretty wacky. They'll just put Bonk anywhere. The game also really likes little mazes that you need to solve. They're not bad, but the amount of them can kind of become tiresome. The stages themselves are all pretty long, taking roughly 15 minutes or so each. They don't seem that long though, as you're constantly switching scene after scene during each stage. The boss fights are usually pretty fun and often have some of that crazy Mode 7 that the Super Nintendo could do in order to blow you out of your seat. Take that, TurboGrafx users! Your system is weak and your choice in consoles is poor! The visuals are really good and true to the Bonk universe, at least as far as the characters go. There's some parallax scrolling which is nice to see in the series, but the colors are darker and more muted than the TurboGrafx games. Yeah, take that, Super Nintendo users! Can't even be as colorful as the original games! There's nothing to complain about or praise when it comes to the music and the sound, it's just kind of there. Overall, this is a good game, and I like the new things introduced here, but I wish the game was a bit brighter. The last Bonk game to come out in 1994 was Bonk's Revenge for the Game Boy. This has absolutely nothing to do with the TurboGrafx 16 game of the same name other than Bonk is in it and it's a typical platformer. Other than that, it's a completely original game. The play mechanics are similar, but they will take some getting used to as they don't quite feel as precise. Now as you grab a piece of meat, your character cycles between one of 3 modes and you have to pick the one you want as it flashes by. Doesn't seem to matter much though, as once you touch something it goes away. One time I had to fight an enemy in a bonus stage. Well, I lost, and as a result I became Mummy Bonk as I played through the normal stages, which I thought was pretty cool. This lasted all the way up until I died. I do like that you can climb on ceilings now. You can even duck and crawl, kind of. Bonk even goes into space again, I mean, why not? The good news is that this one moves much more smoothly than the first Game Boy game. It's also compatible with the Super Game Boy and has its own unique border. The music is neither spectacular or horrible, which seems to be the case on a lot of these non-TurboGrafx Bonk games. Overall, this is a pretty good entry in the series, especially considering that it's running on the Game Boy. I still like the TurboGrafx Bonk's Revenge better, but honestly this isn't bad. It's worth mentioning that in Japan, Genjin Collection was released in 1996 and it featured all 3 Game Boy Bonk games on it. This is Super Game Boy compatible, however, I could not for the life of me get past the select screen. It would always just fade out and send me back no matter what button I used to select the game. This might be an EverDrive issue, but honestly I really don't care. In 1996, Super Genjin 2 was released on the Super Famicom. This would have been Super Bonk 2, but alas, it was never released outside of Japan. This one is more like it. Right away, it feels more like a proper Bonk game with bold and bright colors. This one starts out with a tutorial because it knows you're an idiot. The good news is that you can skip it by pressing start. This one adds the ability to skip on water by bonking, which is pretty fun. Meat or other items will turn you into something weird, and being powered up doesn't play much of a role here as it does in the previous games. Sometimes you even turn into the doe-eyed girl Bonk from the arcade game, which is a nice touch, but there doesn't seem to be any special powers that come with this. There's even a hobo Bonk, which is kind of funny. Also, when you die, you're no longer resurrected right there. As a result, there are checkpoints along the way which you need to bonk. This can make some of the boss fights frustrating because if you die, you need to watch their entire entrance again and you can't skip it. Still, this one has some fun stages, like this one where you're zapped and become a zombie, all while your ghost throws fruit at you to help keep you alive. However, I'm at a loss for what to do on this stage. The bridge blows up, and these spikes prevent me from jump spinning across. I also can't seem to make it up to the enemies above to ride them. Damn, I should have played through that tutorial. The graphics are great on this one, far surpassing any other Bonk game today, except maybe the arcade. And what exactly is going on here? Is that... yeah, I think it is. Lordy. This would be the last completely original Bonk game ever released, but certainly not the last game. Wow, Bonk's been all over the place. He's been everywhere except for the Genesis. Why didn't he get a Genesis adventure? Or maybe a Saturn or a PlayStation game? Well, he did make it to the GameCube though. 2003 brought Japan Hudson Collection Volume 3 for the GameCube, which is a remake of the original Bonk's Adventure. As you guessed, this was only ever released in Japan. Now this is how a remake should be, for the most part. I mean, check out these graphics. They look like a diorama or something. The characters are all polygons, and yeah, they look a little silly, but come on, they're not too bad. This is pretty much a straight-up remake of the original in most aspects, with the same levels given a fresh new coat of paint. But a few things have changed. The flowers now give you smiley faces instead of fruit. There's still fruit though, and you can collect all of it in the stage for some bonuses. He screams in absolute agony when he eats meat. I'm telling you, he's a vegetarian. The first piece of meat now makes you a monkey, and Bonk often has some goofy expressions on his face. Now, it's super easy to juggle an enemy, which you can do almost indefinitely. It also feels really good to bonk an enemy. I like how their lives are literally crossed out from existence. Seriously, it's immensely satisfying killing enemies in this game. I also love the little sound effects that are displayed on screen. It's absolutely unnecessary and I love it. It's just silly and fun. The music features the same tunes as the original, but they've been nicely rearranged. It sounds great. The bosses are similar, but they've been changed, unfortunately for the worse. The first boss looks nowhere near as good as he does on the TurboGrafx 16, and his attack pattern has changed. The second boss is an absolute terror. I've never been able to get past him. He's just too fast for a game with these kind of controls, and of course he takes no fewer than 1,000 hits. He also has plenty of unavoidable attacks. Fortunately, you can continue from the boss fight, but he's so annoying that you probably won't want to very much. I wish Bonk's Revenge would have also gotten this treatment, except with reasonable boss fights. Overall though, this is a fantastic remake broken by an extremely unbalanced boss battle. In the mid-2000s, Bonk would end up on the mobile phone in Bonk's Return. This one runs on Java, and about the only thing I can say about this is that it has some nice parallax scrolling, I guess. Oh, and you can freeze enemies even when you're normal Bonk by smashing your head on the ground, but they don't stay frozen very long. It looks kind of weird and it's slow, but decent for a flip phone game, I suppose. The only music in the game is right at the start of it, and that's only if you enable sound. Throughout the rest of the game, all you hear is the occasional sound effect. Overall, like I said, it's not horrible for a flip phone game. There have also been a few Bonk games that were in development, but they were canceled before they were released. Like what might have been known as Bonk RPG. Only a few shots appeared in magazines of this PC Engine game. There's really not much more information about this particular title, but it disappeared pretty fast from the list of upcoming games for the system. There was even going to be a Bonk game for the N64 early on in the console's life. According to Unseen64.net, the developers weren't sure how to deal with Bonk in a 3D world and canceled the game. These two shots of a 3D Bonk are all that we know exist. Finally, there was Bonk, Brink of Extinction, which would have been released on the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and the Wii. This was being developed as far back as 2009 and through most of 2010 by Pi Studios in Texas. It was planned as a budget title available only for download. First off, I have some people I'd like to thank for providing this game footage. If you think GameSack sounds vulgar for a video game show, well then how about Hard for Games? That's right, they're Hard for Games. They gave me some raw PS3 captures at 60 frames per second, which is awesome. Be sure to check them out. I'd also like to thank Andrew Borman for some Xbox 360 footage of World 2, since Hartford Games sucks at playing Bonk and couldn't get past World 1. Figures. Anyway, this game has you traveling to the center of the Earth to move the planet out of the way of a dangerous comet that's on a collision course. Makes sense. You can get a few different powers by changing into different bonks. It almost reminds me of Kid Chameleon on the Genesis, as each bonk has different powers, like the ability to freeze air into blocks of ice, or to smash through walls with certain icons on them. Tiny Bonk even makes a return, but there are no red and blue candies here. There's also a 2-player simultaneous mode to this one. As you can see, everything looks budget quality, even for the systems of the time. But then again, this game is unfinished, so we have to cut it a little bit of slack. And of course, once again, the game takes place in modern times. I mean, Bonk is a caveman after all. I've heard from multiple sources that Hudson canceled this after the tsunami of 2011 hit Japan. Regardless of how it looks and how it plays, it might have been a nice cheap game had it been completed. And that was the last the world heard about Bonk. What do you think? Should they make more Bonk games? Does he even have a place in the gaming landscape anymore? Or should he remain firmly in the past back where he belongs? Regardless, it was still interesting to see Bonk as a mascot during the 16-bit era, and my favorite Bonk game is still Bonk's Revenge on the TurboGrafx. What do you think of Bonk? Let me know. In the meantime, thank you for watching GameSack.
Bonk your way into 16-bit power with the brand new Bonk's Adventure for the TurboGrafx 16.
Power Plus!
Bonk the competition to shame.
Yeah, way better than Nintendo!
We won't support the console in North America very much.
Awesome! Wait, what?
We have absolutely no clue how to market this system. That's right, you just wasted a ton of money. Congratulations! Bonk's Adventure for the TurboGrafx 16. It's better than practically nothing.